本日はなんとリッチーにお勤めのファーガスさんがブルーラグに来てくれてます。
すごい。
今日はよろしくお願いします。
お願いします。
僕が英語喋れないので、英語が喋れるメカニック代表でウエンツと普段グローバル担当してくれるカーネルに来てもらってます。僕はそのブルーラグ入る前からファーガスのこと知ってて、もう憧れの人なんですごく緊張しちゃってるんで、いつも通りじゃなかったら申し訳ないですけど
珍しくデジさんが緊張してますね。
ファーガスはでサンフランシスコでもともとメッセンジャーやってて、まあそのあぜみさんとかまあ昔の足利さんとかもそうだと思うんだけど、昔から僕たちにそのポジティブな影響を与えてくれる、まあ僕らが大好きなサイクリストの一人ですね。はい。でメッセンジャー以外にも自転車の競技の経験もすごい豊富で、僕が大好きなリッチーで今は働いてるっていう感じですかね。でこの前バイクロアって僕の無茶ぶりでデリバリーレース出てもらったんだけど、ぶっちぎりで優勝して、やっぱさすがだなっていうのを目の当たりにして、僕はもうそれだけで今回日本に来てくれて、それが見れたのがすごく嬉しかったですと。
To see you win that race, it was so stoked.
ウエンツもねその場にいてね。
そうで僕はあんまりレース見れなかったですけど、主催者側の想定タイムを大幅に超える速さでゴールしたら、
So your time was like,
Really?
yeah.
僕のなんかすごい憧れの話ばっかしちゃうと撮ってる意味なくなっちゃうんで、ファーガスにスポットを当てて話していきたいと思いますね。
バイクピープルですね。
じゃあまず軽く自己紹介、ファーガス自身に自己紹介してもらおうかな。
Well, cool. Well, first, thank you for having me. It's a great honor to be here and very flattering. Yeah, so I've always grown up around bicycles, and that life and love of bicycles has led me to a job at RITCHEY. And everything I've done in my life has revolved around a bike in one way or another. In college, I briefly worked at a bike shop, and I always rode a bike everywhere, and I wanted to be a messenger. I don't know why, but for some reason when I was a kid I saw Quicksilver, and I just thought that was the coolest thing. And so after college I didn't have a direction, and so I wanted to be a messenger, so I got a job at Western Messenger. And I've worked at a few different companies, a couple cities, and I loved it. I thought it was great. Some of the closest friends I have were from Bike Messenger world. And then I got to a point where I knew I had to try something else, otherwise I would never do anything else. And worked in a couple bike shops, and then I ended up applying for the job at RITCHEY. I've actually applied for a few jobs multiple times, and finally I got the job as marketing. And growing up in Northern California, we always knew about RITCHEY. And when I was a little kid looking at magazines, the Swiss Cross was the bike. And that was just, but I couldn't afford it, you know. And so working at RITCHEY was like this, to say dream is a little corny, but it really was kind of like this awesome point in my life to get the job here. And so I've now been at RITCHEY for just about 10 years, long time. And I was a messenger for about 11 years. So I've almost had this job as long as that.
じゃあ今お話出たメッセンジャーの時の話を聞こうかなと思います。僕らのスタッフもね、元メッセンジャーのスタッフ多いからぜひ聞きたいなと思うんですけど、多分ね2009年の CMWC が東京であったんだけど、その時日本来たらしいから、今回の日本は15年ぶりになるのか。
First time in 15 years?
It's a long time to say that.
Wow, yeah, it is.
そう多分サンフランシスコでメッセンジャーやってたんですけど、メッセンジャー始めるきっかけとか、なんかあったのかな。であとはメッセンジャーっていう仕事に対してなんかファーガスが思うこととかがあればって感じかな。
Where do I start? I'll start with this. I love San Francisco.
Okay. Yeah, we need it.
I've traveled enough, and to me, it's still the best city in the world, and I will always champion San Francisco. And I've had this like kind of like childish drive since I was a little kid to move to San Francisco and be a bike messenger. And obviously I did other things along the way, like went to college, studied like you're supposed to. But being a bike messenger in the city was this amazing and in a lot of ways beautiful opportunity, because you experience the city like no other. And there are little secrets around the city that only I know, or only a handful of people know, and having that relationship with the city is amazing. And I believe that for anyone traveling anywhere, to experience the city on bicycle is way different than public transit or car. It's this very intimate relationship. But I should also say, being a messenger is hard, and it's as fun as it is. There are just as many days, if not more. They're just either mundane or sometimes awful. But they make the good days very, very good, if not great. And I really love that time. Being in my 20s and young 30s, doing that was just fantastic. And again, I met so many different people and experienced things that average person will never do. And I literally rode all over the whole city. Like I know people that never leave their neighborhood. So yeah, it was very, very special period in time.
ウエンツもサンフランシスコ何回か行ったことあるもんね。
そうですね。もう俺はマッシュのそれこそ2015年のマッシュの映像を見て、翌週に俺はチケット取って、
そうだっけ
で自転車持ってって盗まれる。
So he's been to San Francisco. He watched the 2015 MASH video, and the next week he just flew to San Francisco with his bike.
Inspired.
Yeah, but he got his bike stolen.
Just 3 days. I load.
Yeah, it's not like here. Here's so safe. In San Francisco, you have to like hold on to it almost.
好きな街で、さらにその好きな街と密接になるために好きな自転車で仕事してたってことだね。
そうですね。
でもじゃあリッチーのあれだ、マイバイクマイオフィスと一緒だ。
マイバイク、マイバイク。
で、多分当時のやっぱメッセンジャー文化とかサンフランシスコの、僕もまだ20歳そこそこの時だと思うんだけど、やっぱりすごく自転車に影響、日本のそのファッションとかにも影響を与えてたと思うのね。で、特にやっぱり僕はやっぱマッシュが一番大きいし、僕ら今も取り扱いさせてもらってるんだけど、多分マッシュとかダスティン・クラインとかとも当時付き合いあったと思うんだけど、なんか彼らとの、なんつうんだろうな、偽っていうか、彼らのことファーガスはどう思ってたりするのかなっていうのはちょっと聞きたいかなとは思うから。
リッチー・ケイデンスもありましたしね。
そう。
Are you still close?
Dustin and I are very close. In a lot of ways, I don't know, maybe he'll be embarrassed to say, but I feel like we're kind of siblings in that, we do love each other. Sometimes it's like, heads will butt, but you do that with anyone that you care about. So yeah, he's definitely a very close friend. I see Mike on occasion. The MASH time was really interesting because the wave of track bike messenger, the way that I remember it is when I came into the messenger scene, I was like maybe the second wave of track bike messenger in San Francisco. Prior to then was this older generation of late 90s, early thousands messenger. and that was during the dot-com boom, the first dot-com boom. And there were writers that I looked up to that had already kind of paved the way for us in San Francisco. Writers like Jay Ryder, this dude Swerve, Scottish Owl, just Steve 203. They were like these legendary heads. Oh, this dude Tall Can, like there are these legendary heads that like were track bike messengers. And at that time, like when you bought a track bike, it was a real track bike. Like Cannondale or KHS or Chinelli or and so the culture of it was really steeped. So when I came around and I was getting into it, there's kind of like this, like messengers were starting to be considered cool, kind of the same way that skaters were cool.
Yeah.
And so you get these like, we call them fakingers, but just people that want to ride track bikes in fixed gear. They weren't messengers, but they adopted our style, they adopted our culture. Not to gatekeep or anything, but it was strange. It's like they tried to be about that life, but they weren't. And so when MASH showed up, Gabe and Mike were looking at track bikes as through the same lens that they looked at skate, which was pretty revolutionary. But it was also strange for me because I didn't really know them, and I thought like, well, why would you videotape us? Like we're just doing our job. But yeah, so it was a very explosive time, I think, for track bikes and that scene, and everything felt like it was happening so fast because it was progressing, and like fixed gear freestyle was coming out, and people would be doing jumps on like a Pinarello or like a Poglioggi, and I was like, oh my god. And then you started seeing like dedicated bikes for that, which it's kind of like, oh, why would you do that? That's cool, but crazy. And like it was just such a maybe revolutionary isn't the exact word, but it's the closest I can think of. I like dedicated stories. I don't know. I would have to think about that for a while. I just remember the feeling and how now looking back on it, how special that was, and the groundwork that was laid before me to be who I was, and the groundwork that was laid by my peers to inspire like the shop to be as big as it is, or people from across the world. Thinking about it now and looking back on it, it's really very, very special.
エベンツもなんかあるんですよね。
やっぱまあだから多分僕がマッシュとか見てかっこいいと思った人よりも上の世代の人なんで、逆に言うとそうですね、僕はその2000年代、1980年2000年代のマッシュのことはあんまり知らないのを2015を最初に見て、なんか前のもあるんだ
そうだよね
感じだったんで、なんかやっぱその最初はマッシュでさえそこなんで撮ってんだろうみたいな感じだったんだとかでもやっぱ引き続きねダスティンと仲いいのは嬉しいし、またなんか出たら嬉しいなってで、そうリッチー・ケイデンスがWe love the RITCHEY cadence、だからそういう予定はあるのかな。いや言えなかったら
Any new projects with Dustin, or like I mean it's just she's just curious.
The RITCHEY cadence collaboration, RITCHEY as a brand was very traditional, and like as a quick story, before I got a job at RITCHEY, a very good friend of mine, Dave, worked there, and I'd be working as a messenger, and I had time to kill, so I'd be at the magazine stand, and I would see these RITCHEY ads, and they're boring. It was just a picture of the stem, and then some BS about it. And I'll call him up, he's at work, and I'd just say, hey man, I'm at the magazine stand, I see your ad, it sucks. No one wants to see this. And he's like, oh, but that's that's the culture of the company. Like that,
Yeah.
that's what we think. I was like, no, nobody wants to see this. I want to see someone shredding balls on, bike. It's like, no. Anyway, so cut to years later, my predecessor, Sean Coffey, I'd made the introduction between him and Dustin, and he wanted to try something where, let's see what this looks like, and that's where the airflow stem came from. And it was part of this whole drop that Dustin did with Spy, and he did some cadence stuff as well, like Lux. I think it worked well, because he had this like kind of multiple pieces coming together, Yeah, but it's difficult working with the vendor to get the minimum order right, and sometimes the vendor you just don't want to do it, Anyway, to answer your question, I would love to do more things like that.
Yeah.
Because I believe that partnering with other brands elevates each other. Like my philosophy with bikes is there's room for everyone. I can respect another brand, and I want them to succeed as much as I want myself to succeed, which I know isn't like a true like marketing or salesperson, right? Like you're supposed to just be like, my brand's number one, screw everyone else.
Yeah.
I don't like that. I think it's gross, So anyway, I would love to do something else like that in the future. It just takes time. It takes a surprising amount of time to do that.
So when is the first RITCHEY cadence? It's 2011, 16 or 17?
What is it? 24, 13, 14?
Okay.
Somewhere in there.
So your project?
No, that was like the year before I started is when it came out. And then when I got hired, we just did the white stem and the handlebar.
Yeah.
And then after that, then we did a collab with Deluxe, and that was the last one. Yeah. But yeah, so 13 or 14.
ファーガスがリッチ入る前にってことですね。
そう。
それが意外でした。
ね。そう俺もね買ったの多分ブルーラグ入って入社2年目ぐらいじゃないかな。多分出てステムとハンドル買ったの。なんか知んないけど入社したてのシャビにあげちゃったんだよね。後悔してます。
それを俺が今狙って
そう。
So he bought the stem. あと何でしたっけ？
ハンドルバーセットで買った。
handlebar. RITCHEY cadence.
そう白いやつ。
Like RITCHEY cadence colleague. He really regrets it.
彼がまだ大事に使ってるんで。
But he's
それは
using it. So.
Oh, at least he's using it. I didn't do the same thing, but I used it, and so now it's all beat up. I kind of wish I kept it nice, but you make stuff to use them, right?
Yeah.
So it's okay.
まあ結局使うもんだからね。
そうです。でね、ちなみにあれなんだよね、そのバッグがね、20年メッセンジャーの話でゾウバッグなんだけど20年使ってるらしくて、すっごいかっこいい。
そうこれがメッセンジャーバッグだっていう本当に。
これがメッセンジャーバッグ。
Wow.
そうめちゃくちゃかっこいい。
20 years?
Bought it in 2000, the year 2000.
2000年に買った。
25
Wow.
years. Yeah.
So they were saying like, this is a messenger bag,
Yeah, it's I've earned a lot of money with this bag.
これでいっぱい稼いできた。
そうね。OK。じゃあ今度は今のお仕事の話で、リッチーでのお仕事の話を聞こうと思うんだけど、ファーガスは主にリッチーの中でどんな仕事をまずしてますかっていう。
Yeah, so technically my role is marketing. That's what it says on the business card.
Yep.
But RITCHEY is a deceptively small company. It, like globally, there's maybe 30 to 40. More people work at BLUELUG, probably this store, than RITCHEY. But domestically, in the U.S. office, there's 5 or 6 of us, and we Yeah, and then Europe, we have an office in Switzerland, and there's about 6 to 8 there. And then a majority of our labor force is in, labor force isn't the right word. The majority of the company is in Taiwan, and it's, it's spread out between, purchasing department, people that deal with vendors, GM, all of our engineers are there.
Yeah.
So that stated, because it's so small, you end up doing a lot of things. So in my time at RITCHEY, we've been through 4 warranty people, and because of my technical knowledge, every time between the warranty customer service role, I fill in that role. So I'll do customer service and warranty. Because I'm going to the bike shows and hand-built shows, I'll meet with builders and then pass them off to our sales guy. So there's an element of sales involved. Also, someone has to clean the bathroom, So, yeah, it's a lot of things. Also, because it's so small, we have access to everyone in the company in a very familiar way, it's really cool in that, as an example, I was in a bike accident, last month, and the CEO messaged me on WhatsApp, said, "Hey, I hope you're okay." Like, CEO of big company like Trek is not gonna hit up some dude in the company and be like, "I hope you're okay." But that's really special, I think. The fact that I can call Tom, and say, hey, what's up? not that I would do that, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That is very special, So yeah, it's a little bit of everything, but technically marketing is my role.
Okay.
でもマーケティングの仕事もしているっていうと、いろんな仕事するって話だったけど、特にこの持ってきてもらってるガーデンシティとか最近出たランドナーバイクのモンテベロとかはすごくファーガスの意見が取り入れられてできたのかなっていう自転車だと思うんだけど、その辺は僕の推測ですか？
Everyone in the company rides, we all ride, and that's important in that it's this thing that we all love, and we all think about it when we ride is, the handlebars that we choose or the tires or everything, why do we choose that, and then what can make it better, I mean, our role as a brand is to provide a good experience, when you're out trying to experience the world and enjoy it. The inspiration for all the parts comes from everyone in the company. Like the handlebars, for example, like the Coyote, our sales manager, Simon, said, "Hey, this bar I think is a shape that would be comfortable and it'd be applicable for this discipline." And, because of his experience riding and the fact that, he cares about it as much as anyone, makes it successful. The Gardencity, that I had a big hand in helping that come to fruition, and everything about that bike to me, or everything about the bike, is inspired by my experience, and I'm lucky in that I can say, "Hey, I think we should do this, this, and this," and have that discussion with the design team to bring it to life. And Montebello, again, came about from a long ride with friends and riding and saying, "Oh, what if there's a bike that did big tires and had dynamo, and we want the bottom bracket to be lower so that it's comfortable and corners well, and I should have fenders," And I thought, oh yeah, I'm doing randos and I like long rides, and yeah, that sounds perfect. And so having that discussion is important, and everyone in the company has that ability to say, "Hey, what if we did this?" Which I think is cool, because it brings, you know, it's like it's a dumb analogy, but it's like a good stew, or you know, when I was a kid, my dad would make fried rice. You know, everything goes in. It tastes delicious, but it's not because of one thing or another. It's everything, you know. And we're very lucky to have a very, very good team right now, where our communication is good and we can come up with ideas together.
ブルーラグみたいですね。
It's like BLUELUG, you know.
Yeah.
We all have different ideas, and like we have a chance to, you know, say that. Yeah.
I think any company that has that, it's very special. And I think it's such a simple thing, it's easy to forget that not everyone has it. You know, there's a lot of things about the bike that I love. And you know, this statement of, you know, my bike is my office, you know, it's true for all of us. And it really, it's a lot more than that. It's, my bike is where I go to like get rid of things that bum me out, or to feel inspired for something that I love. And what I love about the bicycle, and I've said this before, the bicycle is as simple or as complicated as you want to make it, and where we exist is somewhere in between. It's as simple as a child learning their first pedal strokes, and as complicated as operating a pro tour team. And I think that's wonderful. And you know, we get to basically play on a kid's toy as our jobs. Like, that's cool. And have these wonderful connections with people that you know, we share this common interest, and I really enjoy that.
僕はね、これがだってメイドにも出てて、なんだかったらラダビストに乗ってる実写を持ってきてくれたのがすごく嬉しくて、そう3ツアーのクランクマジで見れたと思って生で見れたと思って
I would have done Suntour hubs, but it's hard to find 20 and 24 hole. So, but luckily my friends at Paul helped me out.
Yeah.
That's good. Suntour is my favorite.
ステッカー作ってたもんね
You made us super stickers.
したら、じゃあせっかくなんで、日本にはやっぱトム・リッチーさんのファンがすごく多いので、トムさんのことを少しお伺いさせてもらえたらなと思うんですけど、まず元気ですか？
Yeah, I mean, yeah, Genki is probably the right word for it. No, he's good. You know, the humble brag that I have about working at RITCHEY is, of his peers, he's the only one who still owns his name. Like, I don't know of anyone else that can say that, or it's very, very few, to be honest. You know, like Steve Potts, sure. Paul Components is probably the only other one who's had as rich of a career or effect on the industry, and still owns and operates his company. And that's very cool. And you know, recently Tom launched the Bull Moose and Biplane Fork project. So getting to work with him on that is very special. You know, not to totally sell the cult of Tom or drink the Kool-Aid, as they say, there really are amazing moments with him, watching him work, because you have to figure he spent the first, you know, 10 to 15 years of his career building frames, an astronomical amount of frames himself, and then, you know, still fabricating and designing products. And then you could go to him and say, hey man, can you weld this frame? And he's like, all right. And 20 minutes later, there's a frame. Like, literally, he works so fast, and he's fluid, and you watch him move, and it's second nature. It's like breathing. And I don't know if he notices this, but I notice this. You catch him on the bike, and he has this like stream of consciousness, right? When he's working in welding, you kind of get the similar thing, and it's really kind of amazing. The fact that, he's still involved with the company, and again, every product goes through him. So even Garden City, we can't just like make the Garden City, and he's like, "What's this?" It's like, "Hey Tom, we want to make this thing." He's like, "Okay, you want to do that? It really should have this, this, and this as well." So it's very again special to have him be there and to consult with him.
自転車だそうです。
いやでも本当にリビングレジェンドの一人だから恐れ多いです。
そうだね。
いや本当に。
そう。一種がね、ツーショット撮ってるから。
ああそうなんですよ。本当にねおっしゃる通りで、名前を冠した人がまだねボスとしているっていうのはマジでかっこいいなって感じだし、その人の声がやっぱ今のね製品にもちゃんとまだ。それがすごいですよね。
そう俺あんまり口出ししないんかなと。そう
だいぶ先輩なのにまだちゃんとかっこいいものが作れるんだっていうのがすごいなと思いますね。
で月1ぐらいで会うのかなトムさん。
How often do you meet Tom?
It varies. Sometimes I won't see him for a few months, and sometimes I see him, once a week. And so there's no consistency.
まあなんか時という場合によるですけど、今1ヶ月会わない時もあれば、週1で会う日もある時もあるんです。
ちなみにあれかな、トムさんはブルーラグのこと知ってんのかな。おこがましいですけど。
Tom know about BLUELUG?
Yes.
おお、すごい嬉しい。やったぜ。よかった。ちょっと僕が最近ファーガスのこと見てて思ったのが、最近ブルベにハマってるんじゃないかなってので、なんか始めたきっかけとか、僕ねやってみようかっていう話をウエンツとしてて、
次のパリブレストパリを目指そうか
言うだけはね。そうなんかそのファーガスにハマったきっかけとか、そのブルベっていう競技にハマったきっかけとかがあれば。
Yeah, I was just thinking about this recently. I think the first time I learned what a brevet was or a randonneur was Grant Peterson. I bought a set of Superbie Pro cranks, and this was like early in Rivendell, so they'd only had, I think, the Atlantis and maybe a couple other things, but they were also selling like that kind of era of components. So they had like some Suntour stuff, there was Dead Stock, Diacomp, Tektro. Anyway, when you ordered from Rivendell, they would send you an issue of the Rivendell Reader. And, this is like not pre-internet, but early internet, and not everything's on there. So there's still a lot of like word of mouth stuff. And in that issue, they talked about Paris, Brest, Paris. And in the back actually was a feature on a writer who ended up later becoming a friend of mine, this gal Kathleen. And she did Paris, Brest, Paris. And I just thought, like, man, that sounds cool. Like, you're riding through France, you're on a long ride. Like, but I'm dumb. I didn't really know what 1,200 kilometers was. I was like, oh, that sounds far. And so that was in my mind. And I thought back then, how old was I? I was maybe 21, 22. And I thought, oh, that sounds cool. That's on my list. And then I became a messenger. And this dude, Joel Metz, he's old school messenger. And he was always about like, I forget the term, but it's like basically like the French paperboy. Like his bike was like a custom build that was based off like that paperboy bike. He was a big proponent of Paris, Brest, Paris, and he got us. He's always telling messengers like, "Oh, you should do it. It's like a big alley cat. You go. There's checkpoints. You ride." And so I did. I didn't know it at the time, but I did a brevet back then. It was the Point Reyes Lighthouse brevet. And at that time, it was the longest ride I'd ever done. It was 200 kilometers. And I remember doing it and just being like way out of my league. Like, had no idea what I was doing. I remember I finished. I got home, I ate a big burrito, and then I slept for 10 hours. And I was just dissolved. And anyway, that was always kind of lingering. And then, you know, cut to 2019, I was kind of done racing bikes, or at least road, like racing crits and stuff. And I thought, I don't want to race anymore. And then 2020 happened. It was a pandemic, right? And I had nothing to do. Like, so at that, it was cool because there's no cars on the road. So I was just riding to and from work every day. It was amazing. And then on the weekends, there's no bike races. So I just started riding further and further and further. Rode to Santa Cruz and back, and I rode to just like 210 kilometers, 220. And doing these long rides every weekend. And I thought, oh, I want to do Paris. And I knew, and so I looked it up again, and I saw, oh, it's in a few years. And I started asking around to friends that had done it. They told me basically how to qualify. You know, I signed up with my local San Francisco Renteneurs. Shout out. Signed up with them, and then 2000. It's funny because, you know, you do the qualifiers. You do a 200, 300, 400, 600, right? And then you can sign up for PBP. But what they don't tell you is, so that happens the year of. Well, you got to do it the year before as well, because then what that does is it puts you in kind of like an advanced queue to pre-register. So you basically have to do the qualifiers 2 years in a row. But yeah, so I just had nothing but time, and I just kept writing, and I was like, okay, I'm ready. So I did all those rides, and then I was able to do PBP.
San Francisco Renteneurs?
San Francisco Renteneurs. Yeah,
I know that. Huge fun.
Cool. So you train for like the PBP? Or?
Yes and no. There's no training, really. Yeah, so the homie Pat Gaffney, he had done Paris. He did it on a tandem multiple times. And I remember asking him, I said, Pat, how do I get ready for this? And he goes, you just keep riding. Like, really? That's your advice? He goes, yeah, you just keep riding. That's all you do, you just ride.
多分ね、ウエンツは大丈夫なの。多分言ってたと思って資格があるのね。前年に200、300、400、600をやんなきゃいけなくて、多分ウエンツは大丈夫。アルゼンチン行ってくる。俺が心配って感じ。
So they want to do the PVP?
Yeah, you should. Yes.
Maybe.
But he's really worried about the qualifying. You got to do like the 200, 400, and 700?
2, 3, 4, 6. Yeah.
そっから1200だからね、一気に。
すごい。So he says that I think Wentz can do it because he rode like through Argentina and like all those big rides.
Oh, cool.
But like he's a little bit worried.
No. So, you know, with the brevet, like an official ACP brevet, there's restrictions to the route in that it can't exceed a certain elevation gain. So, you know, so it remains consistent. So it's not like one route will be like all hills, you know, it all has to be kind of like a similar elevation. But I'm not going to tell you it's easy, but it's easy. You just do it. And it's not a race. You just have to finish within a certain time. And if you just enjoy it, it's totally digestible. Yeah, I highly recommend it. It's such a wonderful thing. So I will say, and maybe experience this with the tour, it's not about the riding, it's about eating. That's the one thing. It's like eating and drinking. If you can remember to eat, drink, the legs are going to keep moving. You know, it's when you forget to do that, then it's just like,
Yeah, yeah.
昨日ログをもらったの。
PVP のあれ
ストラバかな。
がしたログ
そうすごいよ、獲得標高4万フィート。
4万フィートって
For
そう
40,
計算した俺。
for
400,000 feet? The
elevation.
elevation?
no,
あ、そうだっ
Yeah.
た。で1万ね1000メートル。
it's like 10,000 meters or something.
10,000
So it's like 40,400.
40,000.
ほぼ大気圏。
Wow.
But that's spread out. Like if you look at like the elevation profile over the map, it's not this. It's you know, and so that part of France, it's actually kind of amazing because if you look at it, you know, you see some hills, but it's these gullies that will go. So when you're riding, even though it's summertime, it's quite warm, but when you go into the gully, it gets kind of chilly, and so it's the elevation dip and back up that makes the profile.
なんかそのパリブレストの方なのかながすごい昔の街並みが残るすごい素敵な場所だったっていうのを聞いて、だからなんかそのねただしんどいだけじゃなくて、そういうねなんか歴史ある街も走れたらいいなと思ったから挑戦したい気持ちではいる。
でもここで言ってしまった
とやってないじゃんって言われちゃうから、
やりましょうか。
そうね。でまずはファーガスと同じ200から。
200から
We gotta do it.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
let's start with the 200. So.
Yeah. That's the easiest one.
でモンテベロはあれですよね PVP のためにのバイクなんです
あ、そう。
Yeah, so it was, to say it was made specifically for PvP, it's not totally accurate, but its proving grounds, its testing ground was Paris. And at least for RITCHEY, you know, we have the saying that it's built from life, and that's truly what it is, you know, this bike we say like, oh, it can do these things. Well, yeah, because I did it, you know, and so the MONTEBELLO, well, I'll back up. So, you know, we had the idea to do the bike, and, you know, I'm sure you guys know, like, whenever you do any kind of project, you know, you think a year or two in advance. So it was about a year prior that I suggested it, and you know, we discussed what it would be in our meetings and defined it. And then, you know, I'm doing all my qualifiers, but I was doing them on the carbon Outback Breakaway. And that bike, to me, aside from the MONTEBELLO, was near perfect because it was light, it was breakaway, so I could travel with it. The geometry was like pretty sporty, so it was kind of fast. And so I was doing all my qualifiers on that and very used to it. But I kept nagging product development. I'm sure they're so mad at me. I would say, hey, when's the bike done? When's the bike done? Can I get it? Can I get it? You know, like a little kid. And they're like, yeah, I think so, yeah. And then 10 days before I left, like 10 days, they're like, here's the frame. And I get it, and I'd already like put a group set aside for it, like, you know, so I get it, and it was wrong. And it was supposed to be, as it is now, you know, mechanical or electric. Well, this had no braze-ons for cables, and so it was all electric. And I was like, hey, what gives? And they're like, yeah, it's an electric bike. I'm like, no. So I had to go and source an ETAP group.
Wow.
So, you know, I was able to get the group together, build the bike. This sounds dumb saying out loud, but I did 2 200-kilometer rides as a shakeout ride, right? And it was like, okay, this works. Pack it up, fly out. So I had, you know, new group to me, new bike, fly to Europe, and there it was, you know. And when I did PvP, I was based out of Antwerp. I was staying at my friend Jeff's house, because I wanted to do some other stuff in Europe, and RITCHEY was very, very cool in letting me work remotely from Europe. So anyway, I flew into Antwerp, put the Montebello together, rode to Paris. You know, the whole time it's just like new bike and like this energy of like doing this exciting thing on this new bike and all this stuff. But anyway, so a long way around to answer your question is the bike was proven at Paris Brest Paris. And so, you know, after I did the ride, you know, I get back to the meetings and I'm like, okay, it's perfect except for let's do this, tweak it, and now it's the endurance bike that it is.
すごいな。すごい。
You know, thinking about it now, that's crazy. You know, it's like who puts a bike together like the day before essentially you go on this trip and then do this like, you know, 700-mile, 1,200-kilometer ride on a new bike, you know, it's like nuts, but
まあでもうまくいったから。
そうなんかもう完売してるらしいよ。
ああ、そうなんだ。
Oh, it's sold out.
yes.
Wow.
So,
Congratulations.
Thank you. Next run is coming out in February, March.
あ、本当。
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
おお、じゃあ新しい色待とうかな。
How about this one?
Sold out.
Okay.
Gardencity, I think, you know, I'm so amazed by the reception of it because, you know, in the grand scheme of things, selling just a track bike, I guess in one aspect, no one really does it, you know, like, Surly still has the steamroller, right? All City isn't around. There's someone that kind of makes this. And even trying to convince the sales team of this bike, they're like, who's going to buy it? They didn't understand. And, you know, my background, it's like, you can't just say like, I'm from the street, you know, like, this is what we do. But you have to kind of explain like the urban usage of it, you know, the urban cyclist, and, you know, also kind of an old school road racer trainer, you know, it's like on a fixed gear in the winter. Anyway, so we did a very limited edition and disappeared, like with no marketing. All I did was take this to Philly Bike Expo. So I had a bike to ride around Philly when I was there, and I took it to Made. That's it.
Wow.
We didn't tell anyone. Yet people saw it, you know. Like at Philly, we're showing something else. I forget what it was. It was that important. But this bike was there because I rode it. People were like, what's that? You know, and I go, oh, don't worry about it. And then go, oh my God, you know, and so those photos got out. It was kind of on purpose, you know, that I did that. And people kept asking me, you know, and like they'd slide in my DMs, hey, what's this bike? What's it about? You know, and then again, like Made, it was there, and you know, people saw me riding it, but I didn't keep it at the booth because the purpose of the booth was more about Tom, forks, and that was it. That was enough to sell it out like almost immediately. It was wild. But anyway, answer your question. I think so. I think we'll do another run. Obviously not in this color. This color is very, very special to me. But we'll probably do another color.
Sick.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Behind the scenes, like.
Should we keep it a secret?
No.
We can put it in?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's fine.
それ出来上がってマーケティング一切もうほとんどない状態で一瞬で売れちゃったのがすごいびっくりしてて、そうまあ結構わざと何も言わなかったらしいんですけど、
なるほど。めっちゃいいもん。めっちゃいい。
いや僕も欲しいこの色ではないけど、またやると思うって言ってました。
今日はありがとうございました。
ありがとうございます。
ありがとうございました。
Thank you for
どういたしました。
1週間ぐらい一緒にいるんだけどいつも迷惑かけちゃってるけどファーガスってすっごい優しくて、昨日電車で競輪見に行ったんだけど一緒におじいさんに席譲ったりとか一緒にご飯食べてても水注いでのおかわりを俺がやれよって話なんだけどすぐやって率先してやってくれたりとかで、今日のインタビューとかもねすごい真摯に答えてくれて、僕はその憧れのイメージ通りの人だったんでより好きになっちゃって、モンテベロは買おうと思います。
本当にすごいジェット。
そうなんですよ。すごいいい人だから、はい。なんで今日のバイクピーポーっていうのにすごくマッチしたんじゃないかなと思うので、スタッフみんなリッチのパーツとかフレーム好きだからなんか一緒にできたらいいなと思うので、
本当に
今そういうのをリクエストしようかなと思ってるんで、なんかできたらいいなと思ってます。はい、
本当に思ってる。
はい、そんな感じでじゃあ今日はありがとうございました。
ありがとうございます。
カージルも
Thank you for having me.
いつもありがとう。
ありがとう。
はーい。